Hello Nerf fans, this is John with Containment Crew, and today I am going to be modding up a Firestrike for a friend of mine. So I thought I would videotape it and show you guys exactly how I do my Firestrikes, and for the most part I do my Netfinders very similar because they're pretty much the same thing. So, first off, to get started, let's get this bad boy apart. Alright, so now we should be able to pop this open now that all the screws are out. There we go, that was much easier. And here we go. Here's the internals. There's not really too much going on here. We get the plunger tube, our plunger rod, our catch, the catch spring, which is also acts as the trigger return spring if you've never seen this mechanism in here before. But the whole trigger mechanism, the return on the trigger, oh, there goes the spring. But the return on the trigger relies on the catch spring to return the trigger. Let's strip this down a bit. Make sure we don't actually lose these springs. And the other one I don't want to lose is this little tiny nut that sits in the back there that holds the battery door on, because the guy I'm doing this for actually does want them, still functional. So, let's see, this piece can come out. We're not going to deal anything with that. And the whole assembly should just pop right out. Okay. And this front piece here will come off. And there we go, this is all separate now. Just set the shell aside, and I'm going to pull out the little tactical rail piece so that it doesn't go flying out at any time. Alright, so this top piece is just held on with a couple of little clips. The two little clip points are right there and there. It should just pop off. With a little bit of effort. There we go. This front piece kinda is held in right here. And it's just a little bit of prying and twisting to get this apart here. Oh, these things like being trouble. Don't want to damage this too much. There we go. And that broke, but that's okay because we're replacing the barrel. Alright, so plunger rod can come out. We'll focus on that a little bit later. This part, again, the faux barrel here is held on to the plunger tube with just two little clips on the side. Hold this up here. So we can see it just clips on here, and there's one on the exact opposite side, and just a little pry at them. Usually this will pop right off. I'm not too worried about breaking this part because it's not anything that I need. There we go. There's the air restrictor spring, and there's the air restrictor. And the post and the air restrictor plate are still in there. So I'm going to pry this part off. We're not going to need the fake barrel. This goes in the trash pile. I'm not going to need this air restrictor plate. The part that I'm going to need is this part in the plunger tube. Now, thankfully, unlike night finders, these things aren't all glued together. This is the first part I'm going to be working with, this little back plate here. It's the piece that just sets into here. So I'll be back in a moment after I take a Dremel to this and clean out the interior. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of 1/2" PVC and I'm going to socket it in here. And what that's going to do is it's going to make a good place to mount up some CPVC. So I'll be right back. Alright, so we're back now, and hopefully the camera picks this up nicely, but we've taken the ring here, and we have cut out the back plate for the air restrictor, and we've made it a nice clean shot through there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our little ring of PVC. This is probably about a 1/2" of 1/2" PVC. And we're going to socket this on in here. Okay. It's a little snug, but it should snap right in there. Then we're going to take just a little bit of super glue, put a little bit of a ring down in here. Alright. Then take a rubber mallet, or anything else that's not going to really damage it, and tap this bad boy down in there. There we go. A little bit of a rag, clean the extra super glue up, and we'll set that aside to dry. But while we're waiting for that, the other thing I want to mention is the front piece here. I did take my Dremel sanding wheel and bored this out, because what we want to do is we want to be able to have the CPVC slide in there. And right now it's a very tight fit with some careful dremeling, but stock form there's no way you can fit the CPVC through there. So after the super glue's dried on that, I'll be back to start attaching this all up. Alright, so we're back here after some, life interruptions, but we're going to finish working on the Firestrike here. So I've got the interior ring here that now has a piece of half-inch PVC set in it, and we are now going to take the plunger tube and we are going to glue this ring here permanently into the plunger tube, because we are no longer going to use the little clip piece that I believe is in the trash already to hold this thing together. So the important thing to note about this when you're gluing this part back together is this ring here actually has, it might be hard to see on the camera, but it actually has a front side and a back side. The front side, which would be facing towards the outlet of the barrel, fits very loosely in the plunger tube and just falls right out, whereas the back side that's supposed to go in there is very snugly and fits in. But because this is going to be being rammed by a plunger rod, we want to make sure this is 100% secured and never going to come out. So we're going to take our super glue, just like before, make sure we have the right side, and we're just going to put a ring of super glue around this so we get a nice good seal. And we're just going to snug this right on in. Right. Take our rag and just wipe up the excess super glue off this. Right. Now the next part is we're going to take our barreling material and we're going to take the super glue and we're going to glue our barrel right into the half-inch PVC. Should just take a moment to set. Just for alignment purposes, I'm going to drop this back in here. I think it might be a little too humid down here for this super glue to properly set how I want it to, so I'm just going to leave this tacked together for now. Make sure it's not protruding farther into the plunger tube. And I'm just going to leave that to the side and let the super glue set up. So the next part we need to take care of on this, after I cap the super glue back up, so we need to move on to our plunger. Now, unlike the Night Finders, the plunger head on these new Firestrikes, well, they're not new now, they've probably been out for quite a while now, but the plunger head on them is a new design, and it's actually a snap together. If you remove the rubber padding piece here, and I'll bring this up to the lens and hopefully it focuses in on it, but you can see the rod just snaps together with the actual plunger head. which makes it a bit of a pain to get it apart. I know some people I know have been able to pry it apart and snap it back on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to Dremel the little snap-on piece out. And after I've finished with that, I'm going to take a set of screws and washers, tap out the actual plastic, and just put an actual screw in it. So after I get this apart, I'll be back to show you the next part. Alright, so we're back here, and I've ground this down so that the plunger head now pops right off, and we can slide the spring and the little catch piece off, and we want to make sure we don't lose that little catch piece. But there we have it. We have grounded this down a good bit. I've actually, after it came off, I went and I took it down even lower so that it sits below the ridge in this, because I'm going to use the ridge in this for the washers to sit upon. So, now that we have this taken off there, I'm going to take my drill with a number 6 bit, and we're going to make sure this is set the right direction, and I'm actually going to drill straight down this. Okay. Alright. So, now we've put a hole in there into the center of the plastic. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't think the camera's seeing that too well, but it might show up. But we took a number 6 hole, put a number 6 hole in it, and we're going to get our 632 tap. And I'm actually going to tap this so that the screw has something to bite into. Now this shouldn't take too long to tap. There's not much of a wall there, but we still want to make sure this is nice and tapped. Back the tap out. Take our screw. Take our screwdriver, and it should screw in there. So there we have it, and hopefully you can see the screws coming out on the back on a little bit there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to take our replacement spring, and unfortunately the springs that I typically use in night finders are actually a little too long for the Firestrike to catch, so I'm going to have to take a couple coils off the spring. Now, these are the springs I typically use. They come from Home Depot. They come in a set of 4 springs. And let me open the package up and I'll show them to you. Of course it doesn't want to open, right? Nothing ever wants to work when you're on camera. But, come on. Inside these incredibly tough springs that I haven't found a use for. So those are getting set aside, but this is the spring we're after. The brand on these is Everbuilt. I've been told that they're kind of a regional thing. Not all Home Depots carry this brand, and the equivalent brands that they do carry sometimes aren't exactly the same. They're very similar to the Ace Hardware number 49 spring. If you've ever seen one of those, they're a very similar spring, but unfortunately these ones are too long, and I know for a fact that I do have to take a couple of coils off. And I'm not sure if it's 4 or 3. I believe it's 3 coils have to come off, so we're going to start with the first, second, third coil. I'm going to mark it off here where I want to cut it. And typically, for cutting these, I usually go and grab a pair of bolt cutters. You can also do it with a Dremel rotary wheel or anything else that is good at cutting steel. But I'll be back after I have this cut. Alright, so I'm back here, and I've got the spring cut down, and after looking at it again, I realized 3 coils is way too long. It is 4 coils that have to come off of this. You can see the size of the spring now. I wish you could get the full thing in this, but it just won't prime. After cutting the spring, though, I do always take the grinding wheel on the Dremel and I round off the tip here so that it won't be catching on anything, just to, make things a little smoother. But now that that's cut, we can take our plunger rod here, and we want to make sure that it's facing the correct direction. We want to make sure that the catch here, the catch point here is facing up. We want to make sure that our catch is going on in the correct direction, followed by the spring. And I usually take the cut end of the spring and put it towards the back because it's less likely to move or interfere with the plunger tube or anything from that direction. And we're going to take our head here, and I'm going to socket the piece of rubber back on there, as this will indeed help it act as a bit of a stop there, so that it reduces the impact. I'm going to take my 2 washers. The first one that's going in is a number 8 washer, and it's just going to sit there right in there. And the second one that's going in is going to be a number 6 washer. And we're going to take our number 6 screw. This is a 1-inch number 6 screw. It's going to go in there, and we're just going to tighten this down so that it screws into the plastic. There. Alright, so we're back, and the super glue has had a nice amount of time to dry now. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take on the front of here, I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to trace the edge of where the barrel is around here, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this off here at, I guess what you would call the fake, muzzle bit there. Because what I want to have done with this is I'd like to have the barrel completely concealed on the inside of this blaster, so that from the outside at a quick glance it looks completely stock. And the main reason for doing this is mostly because the game types that we play are mostly HVZ, and you do get a bit of an advantage having the zombies think you're at least carrying stock blasters. So we always try to keep, a lot of our stuff that's general use and, not for, showpiece kind of things, looking fairly stock. So now that I've traced lines on this, I'm going to pop it open and I'm going to take it over to my scroll saw, and I am going to cut this down, make a couple adjustments, and then we'll be pretty much ready to get this thing back together. So I'm going to cut again, and I'll be right back after I've gotten this cut. Okay, did I hit the record button? Alright. So we're back again, and I have cut this down, and hopefully you can see on the camera here. There we have it. From the side, it is almost entirely flush. There's no CPVC sticking out the front, so from the side this looks completely stock. And if you even went and took a little bit of orange paint and covered up the kind of off-white that the CPVC is, from the front this would look almost entirely stock, unless you were really up close to it. So, now that that's done, the only thing left is to start getting this back together. So, I'm going to pop this out real quick again, as well as this piece here. And I am looking for this. This little top bar here is just going to sit right nicely in its slot. We're going to get our plunger rod back. And actually, I forgot to bring some lubricant over here, so just give me 1 second. I'm just going to turn around to my toolbox. Oh, it's on my table. Alright. Sorry about that. I'm just going to take a little bit of lube here, and we're going to re-lube the O-ring up. Let's get a nice little coat on that. Slide it up and down the plunger tube, make sure we get that all nice and evenly distributed. And we can go about setting these things back together. Catch faces that way. Let's pop this back in there. Now, some of the alignment for getting this together is a little bit tricky. Make sure the light gets in there. Slide that in. This bar. Now that this doesn't have its clips to stay in, it likes to move around a bit. Alright, so I'll make sure the spring is loaded in. Give it a couple of twists. Come on. Get it up on its lip that it's supposed to be sitting on. I'm just going to push it down in there so the end isn't... There we go. So that all seats in. Get the catch back in place. Come on. There we go. Alright, what is left that has to go inside? The dart holder. That just sockets right back where it came out of. Just like that. Our trigger. Let's make sure the wires feed back into their appropriate little guides there, or else they might have a habit of getting in the way of the trigger. Rotate this around so you can see what I'm talking about. The wires have this little guide channel in here, and there's a couple little points in there. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. You just want to make sure the wires fed in back the way that it came out so that it doesn't interfere with the trigger path. So the trigger will set right in here. Make sure that's forward. We'll get our catch spring. I haven't noticed any issues with upgrading the catch spring, but if you may find that if you've got a slightly stronger spring, you may need to upgrade the catch spring, but I've never had any trouble with it. So I'm just going to put the original one back in there. A little tactical rail piece, because you got to look tactical. And the little nut for the battery door. That just finds its way back into here. Right, everybody's in its place, and this should just slide right on. Then it's just a matter of getting our screws back in. Alright, so I've got this. Okay. Alright, so I'm back and I've got this put back together now, and as we can see here, it's a much stiffer prime. And the result of that is, with the new spring in there, we have a much stronger blaster. I'm going to try to shoot this and not hit my camera, but it's got a really nice pop to it. A lot of times you bring one of these in, and the zombies really are not expecting the way these fire. But they've got a lot more power, much tighter barrel, you get a really nice pop out of them. I don't have any real official ranges on these, but from what we're guessing from shooting down my friend's driveway, which is about a 130-foot driveway, they usually, you know, I'd say they'd hit body height probably around the 85-90-foot mark. You know, they'll clear the driveway, you know, with you know, hitting the ground, but you know, as far as a straight shot, right down there, body height, they probably shoot about 85 feet, I'd say. But you know, maybe if I ever get outside to and remember to bring my tape measure, because I actually have a 150-foot tape measure, you know, maybe I'll get you guys some range shots eventually. But there you go. That is how I like to do up my fire strikes, and I do my night finders very similarly. The one thing to note about the night finder is the plunger tube, just the way that it's set up, and being that the catch is a little bit farther away from the end of the plunger tube, you can get the whole spring in there and get full compression on the spring. I would say my night finders are a little bit stronger than these fire strikes, just because they get full compression on this spring. But there you guys go. That's how I do my night finders. and fire strikes.